ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Good morning, this is Arlene and you are listening to ASEAN Daily, where we bring you the freshest news from Southeast Asia. First up, let's go to Malaysia. Efforts to seek the release of one more Malaysian held hostage by the Abu Sayyaf rebels in southern Philippines will continue. This is according to Malaysia's Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Sri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi. He, who is also the Home Minister, said he was happy one of the hostages, Tian Nyuk Fan, a restaurant owner, has been released without any ransom money being paid, and that she is now back with her family in Sandakan. The government is confident that the kidnappers will release one more hostage still in their custody as soon as possible, and that they will not impose any tight condition. Nevertheless, Bernard Tan remains captive in one of the many islands in the southern Philippines. In May, Tanner and her customer Bernard Tan were taken hostage after Philippine gunmen stormed a seafood restaurant in the shores of Sandakan, not far from the town center. He was held hostage by the Abu Sayyaf and released from the Indanan area in Jolo Island about 11 p.m. yesterday. Meanwhile, Sabah Chief Minister Datuk Sri Musa Aman said Tan's release was the result of months of negotiations and coordination among relevant authorities. They are definitely relieved that one of the hostages have been released. Moving on to Myanmar. As we all know, Myanmar had just concluded its election last weekend, and we are seeing that Aung San Suu Kyi and her National League for Democracy party has taken over 90% of the vote with about 47 of the seats declared. Ms. Suu Kyi has written to the leadership requesting talks on national reconciliation. But spokesman Yu Yi-tun said such a meeting could only take place after the final results were announced. He insisted that there were no attempt to delay the declaration of result from Sunday's election. The ruling military-backed Union Solidarity Development Party, or short for USDP, which won the last widely criticized election 5 years ago, has so far gained only 5% of the seats being contested in Myanmar, or known as Burma. A quarter of the seats are reserved for the military. Moving to the Philippines, we are seeing China being welcomed warmly by the Filipinos. The Philippines has pledged a warm welcome for China's leader Xi Jinping at an economic summit in Manila next week. Despite a row over disputed islands, President Benigno Aquino and Foreign Secretary Albert de Rosario made the pledge in rare talks with China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who is also on a working visa ahead of the annual Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation APEC summit. The President mentioned that he welcomed the decision of President Xi Jinping to attend the APEC summit. He assured the foreign minister that it is in the culture of the Filipinos as hosts to make their guests feel the warmth of the Filipino hospitality. The Chinese minister, who did not speak to the press, visited the Philippines to ensure the presidency's visit will be smooth, safe and successful. Filipino Foreign Ministry spokesman Charles Jose told reporters. Marciano Peno, head of the host APEC Summit Organizing Committee, told reporters on Monday that the maritime role would be off the summit agenda. He said he will reiterate when they meet at APEC. It's an all economic issues and they do not want to take specific bilateral issues in APEC. Anyway, we'll move on to the ASEAN conference advocating greater role for young women in politics, which happened in Malaysia recently. Young women in the ASEAN region should be given the opportunity to lead and be the voice in politics to create a gender balance in the arena. This was one of the 3 resolutions reached at the end of the 2-day ASEAN Young Women Leaders Conference meeting today, participated by more than 500 young women of different backgrounds from ASEAN countries. According to the senior lecturer of University Malaya's Arts and Social Science, Dr. Noor Sulastri Yurni Ahmad, said that political opportunities should be widely open to young women in Malaysia as well as other ASEAN countries. They are seeing very little opportunity for young women to be frontline political leaders. And as well as such benefit will definitely go towards women and addressing the gender gap in Southeast Asia. In order to achieve a well-developed nation, one must rectify this issue. Gender inequality is not new to a lot of the people in Southeast Asia, and for years efforts have been made to promote equality in the workforce and society in general. Anyway, that's all from our political news. We'll move on to our economic news and socio-cultural after this song break.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hi, welcome back. This is Arlene and you are listening to Duran ASEAN, the voice of discovery and sharing. Malaysia, Thailand, China have biggest rise in household debt. An estimated of $6.2 trillion jump in emerging market household debt should stir regulators into action, given the red flags raised by rising problem loans and slowing economic growth. This is according to the Institute of International Finance. The Institute of International Finance estimated that combined global household debt was now more than $44 trillion, and that $6.2 trillion of a $7.7 trillion rise in the amount since 2007, prior to the global financial crisis, was in emerging markets. That equated to a rise in those regions of more than 120% to around $3,000 per adult, according to the latest data. These increases in the context of slowing growth in emerging economies and combined with a sharp rise in corporate debt has contributed to an increase in the level of problem loans in many EM banks, most notably in Asia. With slow growth and deflation restocking the global economy, the relatively high level of debt in these countries could become a burden. As such, these situations need to be monitored closely by authorities and regulators and addressed. The 3 biggest rise in the household debt to GDP gap were in Thailand, Malaysia, and China. Virtually 90% of Chinese are homeowners, one of the highest rates in the world, and there is a concern that a steep decline in prices could hit the country hard. In Malaysia, the debt ratio is much higher at over 145%. House prices there have risen by around 75% since 2007, while in Thailand they have risen 28% since early 2008. Malaysia's household sector appears quite vulnerable to what could shape up as a perfect storm. Weakening growth, rising interest rates to defend the depreciating ringgit, and a possible correction in house prices. And moving on to another news. In Asia, Asian futures mix as dollars maintains gains. Asian index futures were mixed with the dollar maintained its gains, trading near a 1-month high against its Australian and New Zealand counterparts, ahead of an onslaught of Chinese economic data. Evidence that the slowdown continues to hold sway over Asia's largest economy has caused through financial markets this week.
further unsettling investors already bracing for higher US interest rates as soon as December, while New Zealand stocks eke out some early gains and Japanese futures jump in Chicago. Contracts on indexes in Hong Kong and South Korea foreshadow another day of losses. The euro lingered near a 6-month low, with data indicating China faces a deflationary threat, spurring losses among base metals and mining stocks. Investors are turning their attention to today's reports, which include retail sales, factory production, and a reading on fixed assets investment. Markets saw the most volatility in 4 years last quarter, with concern over the impact of China's slowdown globally ignited by the country's shock currency devaluation. The online retail event that is Singles Day in China may also give traders a reading on consumer demand in the world's second largest economy. Asia equity market are likely to see a fairly benign open, although there will be close attention on the Chinese data dump. The world will be keen to see if further stability is prevalent in some of the more high-frequency numbers. Talking about Singles Day, well, China's Alibaba breaks Singles Day record as sales surge. Can you believe that by the close of trade, the site of Alibaba seen sales worth of 91.2 billion yuan or 14.3 billion US dollar, a 60% increase from last year. E-commerce giant Alibaba has broken its own record of sales on China's Singles Day, the world's biggest online shopping event. In comparison, sales on Cyber Monday, which is the biggest online shopping day in the US, hit 1.35 billion. It's quite small, according to the data analytics from Comscore. Singles Day is held every year on 11 November. The day is also referred to as Double 11 because of its date. 80% share of China's total online shopping market happens during the Singles Day. 120,000 estimated orders each minute on 2015 Singles Day. 73% of purchases in the first hour made via mobile phone, interestingly. 12 hours time taken to beat the 2014 whole day record of 9.3 billion. The reaction to China's Singles Day shopping bonanza reflects the drama and excitement of China's capitalist holiday. Some of them won 2 different codes, but both sold out in the first 3 minutes of the sale. This is the complaint by one young woman in China during the Singles Day shopping online. That's all from us today. We will continue on our socio-cultural news later on after this break.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Welcome back, this is Arlene and you're listening to ASEAN Daily with me. So, talking about English, it is such an important lingua franca for the global world, especially if you are working in a profession where the language is required. Unfortunately, according to experts in Malaysia, medical graduates in Malaysia can't work well without good grasp of the language English. The declining state of English proficiency is rearing its head in the medical fraternity. Medical Deans Council of Public Universities Chairman Professor Datuk Dr. Raymond Azman Ali expressed concern over the poor command of the language among medical undergraduates and new doctors. It is not just a problem among medical undergraduates. We can detect similar problems with young doctors, according to him. With all due respect, it is apparent in hospitals where they do their presentation and converse with their peers and seniors. He said that this would affect their services since doctors had to communicate with patients and their counterparts efficiently.
English is a common language for medicine. Most of the time, they have to publish journals and present in English. It would be bad for them if Malaysians could not communicate on work properly in English. 90% of the journals are published in English. And how do you expect them to comprehend medical theses and help patients if they cannot understand them in the first place? Sharing his own experience when he studied medicine in Monash University, Australia, he said all his cases were presented in English. This definitely helped him to understand complex theories and present his paper in his final year. He said also that many medical students show excellent credentials on paper, but when interviewed, they had trouble expressing themselves. When the medical panel conducted their interview in public university with the students, most of their results look good on paper, but when they ask them to explain something, they will ask the panel back whether they can answer in Malay. When we ask again in English, they get stuck. Dr. Syaiful, who graduated from University Kebangsaan Malaysia in 1994, said he benefited from the system in UKM, where medicine was taught in English. Most of the lecturers were Malaysians, although they did have exception of one Myanmar and one English professor. They used international textbooks and journals and did have some translated books.
And he remembered a physiology book that was in Malay, interestingly.
During study group sessions, they used both Malay and English, but during examinations, they would still have to answer it in English. Deputy Education Minister P. Kalamanatan said ongoing efforts were being taken to further improve the English language. On the other hand, we see plights faced by orangutan in Indonesia. A rare Borneo orangutan and her baby have been rescued for an attack by angry villagers in Indonesia as they were escaping rampant wildfire. The malnourished mother and her youngster were found traumatized and hugging one another when they were saved by International Animal Rescue. Frightened locals reported hurled rocks at them and tried to tie them up. Rescuers said the mother, who was extremely thin, had sustained wounds to the skin. Primates escaping forest fire in Indonesia often head to villages in search for food, but many locals view them as pests, resulting in an increase in human-animal conflict. The International Animal Rescue team said that the two primates were rescued just in time. They said that the mother had just enough milk to nourish the baby. She was also injured by a rope that had been tied to her wrist. The rescue team anesthetized both animals in West Kalimantan province last month so that they could be safely released after medical tests to a protected area of forest for monitoring. Many apes have been forced to flee their forest homes to escape thousands of forest fires that have engulfed the country this year. And that's all from us today. Thanks for listening to Durian ASEAN. You can catch us live at durianasian.com as usual, Monday to Friday. We air live at 8 o'clock in the morning, GMT plus 8. But we also have podcasts which you can view it on our YouTube channel, Durian ASEAN and Durian ASEAN TV. You can also listen to us on the go by downloading the Durian ASEAN app on your app store. Thank you and have a great day.